Thanks for staying with us. First up, members of the Pensioner Bondholders Forum have hit the picket lines again, demanding payment of all their outstanding coupons and principals. The group says it will picket the Ministry of Finance every working day until further notice. Dr. Edouanani Entry is convener of the forum and says members are struggling to survive due to the current economic conditions. The pensioners are asking government to borrow from the treasury market to pay them. Listen to Dr. Anani Entry speak earlier to AM show host Benjamin Akapo.
Just as we were there until the exemption was granted us, once we started, we will be there until the payments are made.
I see. No matter how long it takes?
No matter how long.
So if this extends into a year, are you telling me that your members are willing to keep picketing?
Yes.
If it turns out that the funds are simply not available to make payments to your group, what then happens? Are you going to still continue picketing?
I think I have advised, I've said that government can borrow from the treasury bill market and pay us.
You want government to borrow from the treasury bill market to pay you?
Bill market and pay us, yes, because government is borrowing from the same treasury bill market to pay people who are holding the treasury bills when it matures.
The country is in dire economic straits. We're going to the IMF. You want further borrowing, especially when government has been asked to tone down, tame itself when it comes to borrowing?
This is life and death. And you recall that the president once said, if you can't bring the debt from back, but you can bring the economy back. If you don't pay these pensioners, they will die because they cannot get their medication. You can't bring them back. So just as the government, the president said, take the treasury bill and pay these pensioners so that they will not die. Let the economy, our debts rise a little. We can bring it back. We can bring the life of the dead back.
JoyNews' James Aveji was at the Ministry of Finance to interact with the pensioners. Here's his report.
On the 6th of February, that fateful Monday, these old citizens came to the Finance Ministry here in Accra to picket. Their message was that they want to be exempted from the then ongoing domestic debt exchange program, where government was calling on the local creditors to sign on to some new agreements that the pensioner bondholders mentioned that they do not want to join. They called that government actually gave a window for those creditors who do not want to sign on to the new terms can self-exempt, where the pensioner bondholders indicated that they do not want to self-exempt, but they want the government to pronounce them exempted. And so from that Monday, they have been picketing at the Finance Ministry. On Friday, actually, we had the former Chief Justice join them on that protest. It continued into another week of long protests, where on Thursday, which was the 16th of February, the Finance Minister on a second occasion met them and promised to exempt them as they wish. And so they took the 17th of February, which was a Friday's protest, to Parliament, when the Finance Minister met Parliament to brief Parliament on how far it has gone on the then arrangement to a domestic debt exchange program. And so that is how far they have come. And then later we saw a document from the Finance Ministry assuring them that they have been exempted by government from the domestic debt exchange program. The expectation was that after that announcement, government would go ahead to pay them their matured coupons as well as the matured principals of some of them who have got theirs matured. But the indication we have is that from that 17th of February to today we are talking, government has not honored its obligation. And so the reason why they have resumed here today to picket the Finance Ministry. I'll be speaking with Dr. Edouanani Entry to pick some thoughts from him on the arrangement so far and what exactly they intend to do. But here is a retired police officer who has traveled all the way, I'm told, from the Volta region to join them here for today's protest. We can pick some thoughts from him on why. Tell us about tell us who you are and why you have decided to come all the way from the Volta. You told me you are a retired police officer.
Yes, please. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I'm a retired police chief inspector, a pensioner. And in fact, after I retired, by God's grace, I was able to put something down where I will lay my head before I retired. So when I retired, I had a small thing, and I decided to invest it so that I can be using it for other projects which I've planned to do, and to the same time using it for my medical care. As I'm speaking now, I've been referred to Ho to even undergo some medical check-up, and because of money issued, I've not gone yet. And I'm having 2 bonds with Ghana Commercial Bank, precisely Sugakope branch. And on the 17th April, a coupon is supposed to be paid for a coupon. And as I'm standing here, or we are gathering here together with my colleagues, today, 8th May, I have another what? Coupon.
Maturing.
Yes, to be paid today on the 8th May. And in fact, it's very painful for a police officer serving this country for almost 35 years. And the little I had for that my stewardship, and to be what? Taken by the government, in fact, it's very disastrous. Some of us will never tolerate this. And if they continue to do it, their descendants and ascendants will be suffer.
The pensioners are back to the finance ministry picketing, calling on government. The first phase of this was demand for total exemption from the domestic debt exchange program, which they have gotten. But the failure of government to honor its obligation has brought them back to the finance ministry here.
James Aveji with that report from the Ministry of Finance. Associate Professor of Finance at the Andrews University, Professor William Supra, joins us on Zoom with a reaction to this. Good afternoon to you, or good morning to you from here. What do you make of the pensioners' demand the government borrows from the Treasury market to pay their matured coupons and principals?
Good afternoon, Daryl, and good morning from my side, and good afternoon to your viewers. This situation is very unfortunate because we know that government gave an assurance to these pensioners that when their coupons become due with principal, they will make plans to make the payment. And it's coming out that I'm sure government is having these liquidity challenges, and that is what is making government struggling to make the payment. I mean, the suggestion by the pensioners is valid. Government can decide to swap some of these coupon payments or the principal payments and factor them into the Treasury bill demands and find a way to make payments to them, especially the coupon portion of the loan, those which are due. If government cannot even pay the principal, the coupon payment can be planned into the cash flow demands from the Treasury bill side and be paying them. At least that will slow down the pressure. If you listen to the pensioners, all that they are requiring or requesting government to do is to give them some cash so that they'll be able to take care of their medical needs. I mean, we are all human beings, and we have to be very, very much aware that once you get to this age and you cannot work, you only depend on a stable income. Bond market is noted to give some kind of fixed income. So the coupon payment is what they rely on. So I'll advise government to have. I think they have the team. I've heard your report that there's oversubscriptions coming from the treasury bill side. Can they, and they know the figures, about 500 million, can they structure the coupon payment to only focus on paying the coupons to bring down the pressure? And then they start to communicate with the pension fund holders that we are getting closer, finishing the deal with IMF to give us space so that we'll be able to pay the principals when they are due. So that is what is really needed: a communication and also a strategy to pay the coupons as they are due.
All right. I don't know if I've heard government react to this suggestion from the pensioners, but I'm sure it is giving it a careful thought. What would be the implications if they were to borrow from the treasury markets to pay the pensioners? And is there any other option they could look at?
I mean, we've already mentioned that can government decide to forego some kind of expenditures to support or make the payments to the pension fund to these pensioners. There are some expenditures which government can do away with or can postpone, or even not even expenditures, some capital investment projects which government can, if the payments are not due now but they have the funds, government can rely on them to be able to pay these pensioners. It's very critical. If government decide to use the treasury bill market to support them, we know the implication is going to increase the debt burden of government, which is prolonging into the future. However, to be able to solve the current need and meet the pensioners their requirement, they need to get some money to buy their drugs. I'm not sure some of these pensioners what they receive from their social security will be able to take them home or find a maintenance. But the coupon payment is what probably will be able to help them. So one government should maybe move some funds from some capital investment to pay and then pay the capital projects in the future, or stop some of their current expenditure items to pay these pensioners. And it's needed. We all get to this age. Today it is them, and the following day it will be some of us. So this is something that if I were to sit in the Ministry of Finance, I'll pay much attention to it to find ways to get money for them. Even if it means government suspending some major payments or even getting money from some other agencies to come and pay them. Talk to Tamaoyo, how do you call it? The oil industries, extracting industries, to bring us some to be able to pay them. We need to focus on that. GMPC sits on some cash. Can we go there? When they needed 100 million, we had the finance minister. We loaned them $100 million to do some transactions. Can we ask them to bring us some money to be able to settle these pensioners? The pensioners' issues must be treated with all agency. The president must make sure that he is already a pensioner, though he is a president. So he's in that age. He should think that if it were to be him, only living on these coupon payment and principal payment, what would he do?
All right.
And the chief of staff is also a pensioner, so it's getting closer.
Okay.
These are sentiments, and somebody must really think about them. It doesn't matter. My last option would be that, can we talk to Bank of Ghana if you have not signed the MOU of this overdraft, how do you call it, overdraft facility? Talk to Bank of Ghana to help a little bit, because life is at stake now and it's becoming very critical.
We just have a minute more. I just want to switch topics and ask you about this new information we are getting up on our IMF deal, that government may secure a board approval for a deal later this month. What do you make of this new report?
I mean, Daryl, remember we had a chat some time ago when the delay was kind of, and I recommended to government to apply to IMF on lending into official arrears. It's one of the options for Ghana government, and I noticed that is what Ghana government has done. This lending in official arrears means that if a government or a country who is a debtor is already on the path of establishing a credit arrangement with its creditors, and following a program by IMF to be able to bring financial sustainability, IMF is prepared to support or grant you the facility. An important aspect is that if the debtor is making good faith effort to reach an agreement with the creditors on a contribution consistent with the parameters of IMF support program, even if the creditor is unwilling to reach such an agreement, IMF, based on the lending into official arrears, will try to support the country. Daryl, we know that according to the Bank of Ghana, our balance of payments, what is left with, can take us to not more than a month, I think 3 weeks or so. And this situation is very critical. Also, government has suspended payments in foreign currencies on our euro bonds, which is also something affecting the country in terms of grading. So the IMF facility coming in will be able to help us to start paying all our creditors as they are due. Even if our creditors fail not to accept, especially China, if China decides not to grant, when Ghana applies under lending into arrears arrangement, it can be granted. Also, once we are in discuss with the Paris Club agreement, which IMF knows what is happening, they will also prepare to grant us this agreement. So the May 17th proposal is going on that line of let's IMF lend to Ghana in arrears while Ghana goes on to make arrangements with their creditors to establish a firm agreement. If not, as I've mentioned, if you don't get this by June, the country will be in a very tight corner. A lot of things are going to happen because remember, June, there are a lot of claim payments on government. That's in foreign currencies. And this is going to be able to be a very dire situation for the country.
Professor Williams-Wippa, thank you so much, Associate Professor of Finance at the Andrews University. I appreciate your time with us. Now, government borrowing on the money market continued to shoot up significantly as it accepted 99% of the bids tendered by investors for the just-ended Treasury bills auction. The sale of the short-term securities was oversubscribed by about 40%, but once again, the cost of borrowing is a cause for concern to many analysts and watchers. Here's more with Patrick Adam Agama, who is head of trading at Republic Securities. He joins us on Zoom. Patrick, first of all, a rundown on how trading fared last Friday.
Good afternoon, Daryl. So with a target of 2.5 billion, 1.8 billion, the government was able to raise 2.5 billion, which is over 40%. And also we saw that for the 91 day, it jumped by 31.07 basis points to 20.26. Also for the 182 day, we saw a jump by 11.88 basis points and it cleared at 22.8. For the 364 day, it jumped by 10.02 basis points to close at 27.36. In all this, what we noticed was that the bids accepted for the 91 day closed at 20.51%, and for the 182 day closed at 23%. And it should tell you the appetite of investors and where they want to be in the coming week. For the 364 day, we saw it closing at 27.69%. It should tell you where that might be in the coming week.
Yeah, interesting. Today we've seen pensioners hit the picket lines again, asking government to borrow from the Treasury market to pay their matured coupons. Is that workable? Your thoughts on that? I want to hear it.
Yes, it's very workable. It's something that the market needs. The confidence must come back to the market as soon as possible, but we know it will be a huge transfer of risks to Treasury bills. We all know that the government is trying to make Treasury bills risk-free and untouchable. However, if this is done and not structured properly, there'll be a lot of risk coming to the Treasury bills and making it more riskier to investors. Also, if the government is able to pay the old bonds as they are supposed to be paid, it will somehow defeat the 100% risk weighting government has attached to the old bonds, making them more desirable than the new bonds, which is not what that government really wants. They want the new bonds to be more desirable than the old bonds. So it's a chess that the government must play well in order to restore confidence to the market.
Well, let's turn to the capital market because shares of MTN Ghana are expected to dominate trading this week. Tell us how trading went last week and what we should expect for this week.
Well, for last week, MTN was the sole loser, the sole mover in the market. It lost and closed at 1 cedi 20 pesos. But just this morning, we saw MTN going up again by 5 pesos. So we are seeing a lot of activity in MTN. Unlike we are seeing in the banking stocks, there's been a lot of demand for banking stocks below market price. What it means is that if this goes through, the share price of these banking stocks will fall. So we expect stocks like Bob, Total, and MTN to benefit from what is happening in the banking sector.
All right. Thank you so much, Patrick Edem-Agama, Head of Trading Republic Securities. I appreciate your time with us. So we'll stay with the stock market because capital gains from trading securities listed on the bourse are now taxable. This is because the capital gains tax exemption for Ghana Stock Exchange listed securities has expired. Therefore, investors with securities traded on the Accra bourse are required to determine gains on securities sold from the 1st of January 2022 and account for income tax to the Ghana Revenue Authority. Now, non-compliance may result in a position of late payment interest and filing penalties. But what are the implications on investments on the capital market? Joining us is Gilbert Yurenchi Ado, Senior Manager, Tax Manager at Deloitte Ghana. Thanks for your time, Patrick. Gilbert, rather. Explain a bit more what this is.
Okay, good afternoon, Darwin, and good afternoon to your good listeners. So I would want to take listeners down the historical lane for us to have a better perspective of how this whole thing started. You know, the exchange started operations. It was formed in 1989 and started operations in 1990. So in 2002, when the Income Tax Act was passed, exemption was granted to investors who would invest in companies that are listed on the exchange. I think then it was only 8 companies that were listed on the stock exchange. So in order to encourage more investors, to invest in equity shareholdings, the exemption was granted, and over the years, it's been extended. And I think that the exemption lasted up to some period, and in December 2021, the expectation was that the last expiration period would be exempted. But unfortunately, government there was a bill that was laid at Parliament, and it had that provision in there to extend it a bit further as a way of encouraging more investment in the equity market. But unfortunately, when the law was passed, that particular provision was not part. So then it meant that if you dispose of your equity holding on the exchange, whatever gains that you make will be subject to tax. For the 2022 in tax balance, we say year of assessment, and then going forward. So that has been the position. Although the expectation was that exemption would have been extended, but up to date, government have not done that. So then that means by the end of the 2022 year of assessment, any disposal that you have made in terms of your equity listing, gains that are made will be subject to tax. Now, how does the gain come about? It come about by considering the consideration, the amount at which the shares was sold on the exchange, and then by taking out any cost that you have incurred. So the net position invariably becomes your gain, if any, and that gain will be subject to tax. And if it's a company, they will then pay tax at a rate of 25% because it will be considered as either their business or investment income and subject to tax at a rate of 25%. But for individuals, they had the election for it to be taxed at a straight tax rate of 15%, but that has been amended. So currently, you have the option for it to be taxed at a straight income tax rate of 25%, other than it going through the graduated income tax rate for an individual.
Won't this deter investors, and what are the implications on government's overall financial inclusion agenda?
Great. So we need to look at it in two perspectives. We have resident persons who are trading on the exchange, and resident persons, companies as well as individuals as you and myself who are, by virtue of the shares that they've purchased, which are being traded on the exchange, when you make any gains on same, you would be subject to tax. So, I mean, we should also give credence to the fact that we have enjoyed some form of a benefit since the inception of the exchange up to date. And I think that government will now want to rake in some form of revenue. And it's in order, because if you have enjoyed some form of benefit over the years, and the policy intent was to ensure that we trade on the exchange and the exchange grows. Currently, we have about 39 companies or more listed on the exchange. So the policy intent could have been achieved. So it is now time for government to make some benefit or rake in some revenue in that angle. But then the only challenge is the tone of the economy now, because currently there are issues that are lingering on in the economy. So in essence, it's going to send some form of not a good message to investors, because, well, once I trade on the exchange, I mean, I stand to be taxed. Already we are saddled with a lot of taxes already in the economy, which is affecting the cost of doing business. So for resident persons, that is what is going to happen. But for non-resident persons, I mean, people who are not in Ghana or resident in Ghana for tax purposes, for them, there are conditions that has to be met. I mean, in essence, equity instruments within the context of our tax law are construed as domestic assets. So for them, there are some conditions that would have to be looked at before the tax point is triggered.
All right. Thank you so much for the explanation. It was so helpful. That was Gilbert Chirinche Adot, Senior Tax Manager at Deloitte Ghana, speaking to us. And that's the marketplace, everyone. Thanks for watching. More news on our website, myjoyonline.com/business. The day's top stories over there, myjoyonline.com/business. My name is Daryl Kwawu. We will be back same time tomorrow.